Hi all, today we're taking a closer look at the game Towers of Aghasba that just released in early access. If you haven't heard of it yet, Towers of Aghasba is an ambitious open-world fantasy builder where players need to restore a desolate, withered land by creating vibrant and diverse ecosystems and rebuild the home of an ancient civilization, the Shimu. The game is developed by indie studio Dreamlit and available now for PC and PlayStation 5 in early access. From the various insights and behind-the-scenes videos the developers have shared, it's clear that Towers of Aghasba is a passion project that has been nurtured for years until it was finally ready to be shared with the world. Surprisingly, Minecraft was one of the original inspirations for the game, as the idea of using resources and letting players build creatively in an open world was a fresh concept back in the days, long before survival games became popular. However, the vision for the final game was to be a more accessible genre, focusing heavily on exploration, discovery and building. Visually and also for the general vibe of their project, the team has referenced various Studio Ghibli films and games like Shadow of the Colossus and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which comes as no surprise if you watch some of the trailers. And this is also what you feel when actually playing the game. The world is fantastical and the characters and creatures within it range from whimsical and cute to even grotesque at times. We personally think the studio nailed it when it comes to creating an immersive and original fantasy world. To achieve these unique and often painterly aesthetics, the developers worked with an artist from Studio Ghibli who hand-painted many of their textures before they got digitally converted, and another talented Japanese studio digitally hand-painted all in-game icons. Now, if you're into this, the game will definitely be a treat for you, but let's talk about the game's features and the actual gameplay. First of all, good news if you want to play with family or friends. The game can be played solo and co-op with up to 3 other players. While there won't be any official servers, the game can be hosted by any player via peer-to-peer online support. Not available yet, but outlined in the development roadmap is the plan to add an offline play mode as well as crossplay. Both should arrive sometime in 2025. As mentioned earlier, one big element of the game is exploration. While you start on a smaller island, the more you progress and rebuild the world's ecosystem, the more plants, creatures, structures and story you'll be able to discover. Movement is pretty unrestricted too. You can climb, swim, glide and even get a mount later on. At launch, there are 6 regions to explore and 3 types of ecosystems to grow. While we haven't explored everything yet, the size of the map is quite substantial and should keep you busy for a good while. New plants, wildlife and resources you gather or observe are tracked in what the game calls the Shimu decks. This is definitely a feature we love to see in games. Then there's the main story and the questline that will guide you through the game, as you rebuild your civilization's home and restore and expand the ecosystem. Both go hand in hand. Tasks range from building villages and restoring ancient building sites, to fulfilling resource tasks, helping villagers and most importantly, plant and grow new ecosystems. Depending on where and which ecosystem you grow, you will discover different plants and creatures. There are also some side quests and activities like fishing. Throughout these quests and by interacting with a host of different characters, you'll learn a lot more about the lore of the game. There's actually a lot to learn when paying close attention to the dialogues, from the actual fairly rich story to gameplay tips. And the characters are really quirky. Many of the conversations you will have with them are fun and enjoyable. Now, this sounds all very peaceful, but the withered lands are teeming with enemy creatures and ancient evil forces as well. So combat is another aspect of the game. There are different weapons, like spear, bow and sword, and as with tools, you'll learn to craft better versions with better resources over time. Depending on where you explore or harvest resources, creature attacks can be more or less stressful and dangerous. Early on, it can get a bit hectic at times, especially when you try to heal up and get ambushed at the same time. However, while you can die, and it happened a few times to us, there is no loss mechanic in the game, meaning you will simply respawn at your nearest respawn point and with reduced health, but without losing any of your gear, inventory or other permanent damage. Be it restoring the world or defeating enemies, there's another important game mechanic at the core of everything, and that is Amity. Amity is a life force and a type of currency in-game. Whenever you create or improve life in-game, you get Amity. And whenever you take life, which includes harvesting resources, you lose Amity. So the key is to strike a balance between your actions and giving back to the world. Okay, so what do we think of the game after having played through the starter area and parts of the mainland? For reference, our experience is based on an early access preview build of the PC version, so obviously some things might be different or improved already. Well, to start with, the trailers are promising us an incredibly beautiful world and a host of features taken from a variety of genres. From restoring ecosystems, building and maintaining various villages, crafting and resource harvesting, to combat and a rich storyline. On top of that, there are all the small things we love to see in games, like fishing, gliding and mounts. Overall, Towers of Aghasba certainly feels like a very ambitious game, even more so for an indie developer. So, is it too good to be true? Well, yes and no. That's going to be subjective and will depend on your personal expectations and the elements of the game in question. That said, as mentioned earlier, the world, overall aesthetics, the characters, the lore, all these are ticking all the boxes, at least in our book. Now, when it comes to gameplay, our experience was rather positive, with a few things that still need some work and polish. Nothing was truly bad or disappointing, but sometimes the game still feels rough around the edges. The UI and how information is conveyed in-game is still lacking in some aspects. While there are a few accessibility options, the menu for gameplay controls shows only the bare minimum. On the plus side, they are remappable. What we personally found very annoying is that there are no handy shortcuts to access any of the in-game menus directly, like crafting, your journal or the Shimodex. Everything needs to be accessed through the main menu and by navigating to the corresponding categories. Tooltips are also missing in many places, which makes it hard to know what some items or even map icons are for. There's also no option to access tutorials retrospectively, and some vital gameplay tips, like how to add items to your radial wheel, are explained way too late in game or not at all. So if you aren't someone who likes to figure out things by yourself, this might be a source of frustration. Simple things like the minimap, well, let's say we are happy that there is one at all, could also see some improvements, like the option to lock it and maybe add more compass directions. When you unlock things in-game, like recipes or other rewards, these prompts are often overlapped by tutorials that pop up at the same time, cutscenes and similar. And we regularly had a hard time figuring out what exactly we just got or when, as it's so easy to miss them. Overall, there's for sure some polish to be done and quality of life improvements to be added, but we'd say this is within reason for an early access title. And a look at their roadmap shows that this is also their most immediate focus. When it comes to the gameplay itself, well, most of the frustration you might experience might result from what we just described. It's also very easy to get sidetracked and lose focus, and thereby miss out on key upgrades and rewards that could have made your life easier if you'd followed some of the main quests. For example, by instinct, we usually would go out and gather whatever resources we can find. But in case of this game, this can be a mistake, as you often can't use some of it until much later. Which leads us to the biggest annoyance we had with the game so far: storage. Storage is very limited in the early stages, and with a gazillion items to collect, we had to non-stop manage our inventory and storage. Or do one thing at a time because we couldn't carry more. It felt restrictive in some way. When it comes to performance, we can't really complain. Yes, we did experience occasional stutters and low frame rates, which is not uncommon for an early access title. And we expect the devs to be further optimizing it for both platforms. And then there are bugs, of course, like crashes that make you lose some of your progress unless you save frequently, weird deaths, stamina not regenerating, ghost boulders and the likes. That being said, if you don't mind all of this, there's a lot of positive that can be said about the game. Harvesting resources, combat, gliding, all this felt fairly fluid and good. The story feels fleshed out, and we can't really say that anything was missing in terms of features. We haven't tried the co-op mode yet, but it is in-game. Currently there is no character creator, but you can customize some of your character later in game, and more options are on the roadmap. So yes, the game is overly ambitious, but all the core features that have been promised are there. The fantastical setting, story, the building, the ecosystems, the co-op mode, and most importantly the sense of exploration and freedom. It didn't feel like a limited early access demo. It feels like a fully fleshed out game with a ton of potential to expand and build upon. If anything, it needs a bit more time to cook if you want to experience it in its full glory. We'd say give it a go if you want to be part of the journey, and if you prefer it more polished and complete, then wait a few months and keep it on your wishlist. If the devs manage to deliver on their roadmap, this could be a true gem of a game, and one you can sink countless hours into. We hope you found our hands-on impressions helpful. If you like to see more content from us, please don't forget to leave a comment, give us a thumbs up and subscribe.